initiatives and the initiatives taken at Digital India. We are today on day 2 of the event. Today, in the morning session, we'll be discussing artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, which are redefining the way we live, the way we study, the way we access healthcare, the way we go about our lives. And a very interesting day to have this session based on artificial intelligence today, when we also have 20 school projects being demonstrated, being exhibited in the exhibition outside by students from government schools who underwent training in AI for a year. They were part of the cohort of 50,000 students who took part in the phase 1 of the training since last year. 11,000 of them completed the phase 1, and then based on them, they submitted their ideas for building projects. 100 of them were shortlisted next stage, and finally, the list of 60 was announced last month, and the top 20 projects are being showcased here. So these are students from all across the country, from 25 states, who have shown what they can do with artificial intelligence. Their products are showcased outside, and after the event, we would request everyone to go and have a look. Today's panel discussion is on leveraging AI to build solutions for public good at population scale. Focus on AI and emerging technologies are the key thrust areas and the vision of Digital India under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Over the past decade, India has witnessed the influx of disruptive solutions that are leveraging AI for social transformation, inclusive growth, and empowerment of all. MeitY has been working very closely with central government departments, state governments, academia, industry partners, and startups to further build an enabling ecosystem for scalable AI solutions. Today's panel discussion aims to shed light on the experience of the government and state governments and industry partners while building scalable AI solutions and related infrastructure, challenges faced, and the opportunities they see ahead for India. We have a distinguished panel of speakers today, led by Professor Vijay Raghavan, who is the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister. He is a distinguished professor in the field of development genetics and former director of the National Center of Biological Sciences, and also Secretary to Department of Biotechnology. At PSA, he has been at the helm of several critical advisory and working groups, along with the Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy. Prior to this, Professor Vijay Raghavan also served as Secretary to the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. And he is also the chairman of the Empower Technology Group, where he guides implementation of all technology projects, including projects in artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. We have Shri Jayesh Ranjan, who is the Principal Secretary, Industries and Commerce and Information Technology at the Government of Telangana. He leads the Telangana AI Mission. Telangana was a state which declared 2020 as the year of AI, and he has focused on advancing several relevant areas such as data, compute, research, talent, ethics, and governance across key sectors in Telangana. Welcome, sir. And we also had presentations on projects of Telangana yesterday. Our third panelist is Prakash Kumar, sir. Prakash Kumar is the CEO of the Wadhwani Institute of Technology and Policy. We all heard of Wadhwani AI, which has leading projects on AI for healthcare. In fact, in the session after this panel discussion, we have a presentation from Wadhwani AI, and Shekhar is here for that. He joined, prior to joining Wadhwani AI, he has led the GSTN project as CEO. He has been a member of the civil services, and he has also worked in the industry across industry domains like Microsoft, Cisco, Deloitte, and now he is leading the building capacities in the field of AI. We'll be joined by our Secretary Ajay Sani sir and Rajendra and Additional Secretary Dr. Rajendra Kumar as the session progresses. They're stuck in a parliament briefing, so we'll be hoping to have them over here very soon. So we welcome Vijay Raghavan sir, Prakash Kumar sir, and Jayesh Ranjan to join on the dais, please. So we'll begin the panel discussion, and we'll have a series of questions, and towards the last part of it, so we'll have some questions from the audience also. So, sir, we'll begin with Professor Vijay Kumar, Professor Vijay Raghavan. So, advancing the field of artificial intelligence is one of the 9 critical missions under the PM-STAIC. The AI mission focuses on efforts that will benefit India in addressing societal needs in critical areas such as healthcare, education, agriculture, smart cities, etc. What have been some of the key achievements of this mission in promoting AI for social good and advancing core AI research since the commencement of the mission?
Thank you very much, Abhishek, and really good to be here today in a real meeting and wonderful to see everyone masked. Let me give you a bit of a background before I come to Abhishek's specific point. Now, the fundamental issue at hand is what is the purpose of the government getting involved in an AI mission in a context where a lot of this can be driven by private industry and its goals in a manner which we see used all over the place, Swiggy or Zomato or Google Maps and so on. You use data, AI to help the customer, as it were. Now, the principal purpose of the government's involvement are twofold. One is to enable policy and regulation which benefit society. So that's one important component of AI, protecting your rights, your privacy, at the same time allowing you the ability to use data in a big way. And the second is to really enable the growth of the industry in a manner which, again, supports society and the growth of the economy. Now, why is this important in today's world? If we, as the people and the government, don't come together in this enterprise, then we're going to be in a serious situation, because while knowledge has always been power through human civilization, today there's a spiraling asymmetry of knowledge which is happening with big tech companies, for example, and this results in a huge asymmetry, therefore, in both knowledge and power. So the understanding and use of AI has to be distributed and benefit society, not just by being of value to society, but being used and demanded by society. Big tech and big companies can bring value to you by telling you what is good for you in health and agriculture and so on and so forth. But in some sense, while that is valuable economically, it can be disempowering socially. You also need to have control of what kinds of decisions you would like to take or not take and so on and so forth. Therefore, an understanding and training in the use of AI and machine learning and the tools of computer science needs to be widespread. So in this context, what is the goal of the AI mission? India's focus in the AI mission, driven by formulated really well by NITI Aayog and now being implemented by MITI, is AI for society. And that has few components. One is a large-scale training component, so that all the tools of AI, computer science, which are needed for AI, the collection of data and the handling of data are scaled up. This AI mission, therefore, involves not only supporting our extant research institutions, but broadening the footprint of AI research. Second interface is with industry. These structures interface with industry. Why do you need an interface with industry? Industry in India, in these kinds of areas, have resources, but they don't have risk capital of the kind which big industry in the West has. So if Indian industry has to grow, then this risk has to be mitigated, and this can be mitigated by a partnership with academia. So that's the second component, is a partnership with academia and industry. And finally, scaling into society in health, agriculture in particular, transport, weather, pollution, and so on. These are big areas where data collected here, used in the large scale and analyzed, needs to be done, rather than models which are used elsewhere, but the data here are being used. So these are the goals and the targets of the AI mission, and they are going ahead right now.
Thanks a lot, sir. That really puts into perspective like how the government is leading, and your leadership is really helping shape up our AI policy and the initiatives being taken under the national strategy of AI. I come to you, Jayesh Ranjan sir. Telangana has been a front runner in many initiatives pertaining to information technology and its promotion and adoption. What motivated the state government to declare 2020 as the year of AI, and what institutional mechanisms been put in place by the state to realize the vision?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abhishek. Good morning, fellow panelists. Good morning, all the attendees. Let me first of all thank MITI and MyGov for inviting the states also for such a milestone event, because very important national frameworks, national programs, but most of the action happens in the state. So delighted that you have chosen to invite us, that is Telangana government, to share our perspectives. As you rightly pointed out, while 2020 was otherwise a very depressing year, but in Telangana it was also celebrated as the year of AI. Actually, the celebrations began on 1st January, and as all of you would know, the pandemic, particularly the lockdown, started from end of March onwards. But and almost 7-8 months were lost due to this pandemic. But I'm very happy to share that whatever we had planned for the whole year, almost 80% of that we were able to achieve and deliver. So the imperative, the motivation was like this: that as PSSR mentioned, Niti Aayog had taken an initiative in 2018 to bring out the national framework, which they called AI for All. And for that event also, when they had announced the AI for All document, they invited some of us. So I was present in that interaction. And of course, not to say that we were completely unfamiliar with AI, but when we understood the report and the depth of the theme, we recognized the tremendous potential it has for solving some pressing problems that different sections of the society face today. And in Telangana, when we have prepared a policy, there was only one instruction from our chief minister. Chief minister is not very hands-on on IT, I should confess. But when we were explaining the background of the IT policy to him, he gave only one. He just spoke one sentence, and the sentence was, "If the technology can't really help the common man, then it is not worth anything." So that was the principle which we had kind of adopted in devising our policy, looking at various programs, etc. So when we recognize that AI has such transformative potential, we thought that we should also work on it. So after 2018, we took 2019 very seriously to develop. So in Telangana, the approach that we follow is that if we are serious about any vertical of technology, first of all, we come out with a very broad-based framework, and that framework is prepared with lots of consultation. We talk to the industry, we talk to the academia, we understand what kind of innovation is happening from the world of the startups. So a framework is prepared. Then we also create an institutional mechanism. I link up the second part of your question now itself. See, lots of policies are prepared, lots of frameworks are prepared, lots of approach papers are prepared in our country. But we often find that there is a big gap between what is intended and what actually happens on the ground. And one of the main reasons is that no one actually takes responsibility for implementing that intent. So in Telangana, we are very conscious of this lacune, and we take care that after every policy or framework or approach that is announced, an institution is created which has full-time responsibility of implementing that policy. So in Telangana, we created this mission, which is called TAIM, the Telangana Artificial Intelligence Mission. Like all other institutions that we create, we recruit the best talent from the open market to run these institutions. We also bring lots of stakeholders in the advisory positions, etc. So in 2019, we did all that. We created the frame, we developed the work, we created the institution. We identified important areas where interventions can be made. And when we did all that, we felt that we should run a year-long campaign focusing on multiple verticals, multiple domains, involving all the stakeholders group, not just technology companies, but also academic institutions, even common citizens for that matter. And as I said, 80% of what we planned, we were able to achieve. So framework had 5 verticals, as PSSR also mentioned. We also focused on capacity building. We focused on high performance computing. We also focused on governance issues. Most importantly, how do you make data available? So data exchanges, etc. And in Telangana, one very important responsibility that we cast upon ourselves is that the government should be the first adopter. So how do you bring out lots of use cases within the government? So in 2020, we did lots of these. We started amazing training programs. We got 2 high performance computing setups into educational institutions. We ran lots of government adoption programs. We also focused on innovation. So we have a very interesting program called Rev Up, under which we bring AI-based startups to look at actual problem statements and help them with mentors, corporate funding, etc. So when you mentioned that you celebrated 2020 as the year of AI, it of course does not mean that on 31st December 2020 everything stopped. I mean, that was just the first year, and we are now in 2021. We are building upon what we did in 2020. We will continue to do more. So this has been a very satisfying experience for us, dabbling with AI and trying to find multiple solutions that actually help alleviating some of the most pressing problems of the people.
Thank you, sir. In fact, rightly said, sir, having the right policy, having the right institutional framework for implementation, building upon the core building blocks which are required, like the compute, data governance framework, use cases are much needed. At the same time, capacity building and building skills are a must for building us as an AI nation. So this brings me to Prakash Kumar, who is heading Wadhwani Institute for Technology and Policy. And one of the key focus areas of Wadhwani WITP is to skills and build in AI skills, digital skills within the government ecosystem, within the bureaucracy, and trying to help the government to leverage technology for public good. So I would like to ask you, Prakash, sir, what have been like the key initiatives, the key focus areas of the Wadhwani Institute of Technology Policy in this regard?
Thank you, Abhishek, Professor Raghavan, Jayesh, Ranjan, and friends. As Abhishek pointed out, skilling, especially on a new technology for the people who take policy decisions, is very important. Unless they understand what it can do and how it can be leveraged, it becomes difficult to implement such projects. So what we have done, under the guidance of Professor Raghavan, we are working and we have chalked out a program under which we are undertaking a skilling program for different sections of bureaucracy. And the idea is not to teach them how to code, but the idea is to tell them what these technologies are, how they are, how they can be used in your ministry, your department. Now, for what? To look at data which you have. And just to tell you, the government, thanks to NEGP, digital mission run by this ministry and all the state governments, we have huge amount of data, whether you talk of tax departments or of rural development like Manrega, you have food, education, agriculture, weather, everywhere we have lots of data. And some of them have already started looking at their data. So how do we slice, dice that data so that we get a better view? And for what? Basically, one is how the policies are getting implemented. Every policy has some objective that this is what we will achieve. Now, that measurement, using the data which is coming out of that particular project, using these technologies, because that's possible today to process huge amount of data almost in near real time to get a better insight how things are. That's number one. Number two is in new areas, using the data which is available if we have to frame a policy. So that's the second one. How do we do that part? And the third, another very important one is how do we improve the service delivery? Many times as a citizen, we have to fill up long forms. Now, these technologies today are used to find out simple things like where people are facing most of the difficulty, even in getting information or filling up the form. So how do we simplify that? How do we simplify the processes and things of that sort? So for this, we have come up with training programs which are short duration, just 90 minutes for very senior people who have very little time, but they just need to understand the nuances. This is basically for additional secretary, or joint secretary. Then we have 1 day, 2 day, 5 days program for mid-level people or the entry-level people so that they get experience of running some of the tools as well, how they are used. And this we are doing in partnership with central as well as state training institutes. So some of them we have already signed up and we have started the training program. And all these training programs are use case driven. So that we show them explain the concept, and then tell them how Telangana government did this. So this was the problem. This is how they did it. This is what they found. So how Odisha police did this, or things of that sort. So that's the methodology which we have used. So what these emerging technology can do, how they need to be used, and what kind of data is required. That brings us to, again, another very important point, data. Just merely having data is not the sufficient condition. It should be clean, it should be complete, and its integrity should be vouched. If these are not there, then if you process something wrong or which is not complete, you may get completely different picture. So this is also another thing which we emphasize in our training programs, and the areas covered are the most sought after is data analytics, which everyone wants to know. How do I, which is simple, which they can use. Then the next one is NLP. Simple things like your chatbot, which many ministries or departments have started using. That's an application based on ML and natural language processing. Then computer vision, machine learning, blockchain, AR, VR, etc. Little later, we may go in for cyber security, 3D printing, etc. And one more thing, which is not a very high-tech technology, RPA, but that's something if we implement it more and more, it will lead to improvement in processing and also reduction of workload on our overburdened manpower. So these are some of the things which we are handling, Abhishek, at this stage. And we have just started, in fact, and hopefully with feedback coming up from the trainees, which we have started, we'll be improving it and we'll be able to have better impact.
Thanks a lot, sir. In fact, importance of data and data governance can not be ignored whenever we plan any AI-related initiatives. And the most important part, which is a takeaway for all those who have from the states who are here today, is that Wadhwani Institute of Technology Policy conducts training programs in the states and the central government, and all this training program they charge anything. So any CMT members or state government officials who are there, they can avail of their services for getting the training sessions planned, not only for the senior officers, but those who are at the cutting edge. So we realize what data that we have, how do we treat that data, and how do we use it. So with this focus on data and data governance, in fact, we have been discussing this for a very long time, how in various projects that we are implementing, whether it's the health project or the Ocean Tracker project that we implemented or education related projects, we get a lot of data in every government department. Like, how do we ensure that we set up the right data governance framework, and how can we train government resources apart from the support that we can get from Wadhwani Institutes and other such agencies? How do we ingrain this in the way we think and the way we work to lead us to data-driven policymaking?
You've asked the most fundamental question, Abhishek. On one hand, as I mentioned earlier, we use data in our daily lives now when we look at Google Maps or Swiggy and so on and so forth without thinking twice. But when the same people go to work, we exhort others to use the tools of governance and AI at high levels. But in our own activities, we are not that proficient in using it, nor do we use each other's data in different government departments sufficiently. So my sort of joke is that we are very good at data.gov.in. Now we should get better at data.gov.out, you know, and use that information between us. And this happens within ministries and between ministries also. The result of that is that we've got extraordinary capabilities in various units, but the interactive use in day-to-day decision making is not there. So fundamental question is, how can we go about it? Now the answer to that is, why is it so easy for us to adapt to certain kinds of AI-based technologies in public use? And why are we so reluctant in doing that in government sectors? There are two aspects to that. One is properties intrinsic to the structure of data usage which we have. Are they user-friendly? Have they been processed through multiple kinds of APIs in a context-dependent manner to make it readily available within government. So it's a technological fix which is needed. And that is something which MIT is working on in multiple ways across departments. Increasingly, it will become feasible technologically. That will not be a bottleneck. Human resource bottlenecks correspondingly should not be there. It's one thing to have the technology sitting there, but it's another to actually use it naturally in decision making. The third component is a meta point about human resource use, which is what is your purpose in looking at data and analyzing it? It is not just to do the routine, it is to take decisions which otherwise you would not have been able to do without the analysis of data. That is a really amazing set of possibilities, integrating space, weather, agriculture, health data, and using all that, for example, in the Rural Development Ministry on a day-to-day basis, is something so exciting and feasible, and that requires training of people in that kind of lateral thinking. And that's where, WITP and MIT and other training programs are going to be very important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In fact, that really sets up the agenda for how do we crack this? And we have no one better than Jayesh Ranjan to go to. Sir, would you like, since Telangana has taken up so many use cases of implementation of AI, would you like to elaborate a little bit on them, and also with regard to how usage of data and data analytics and having the right data governance framework has played a role in those use cases which Telangana has implemented?
Thank you. So let me list out some interesting use cases to basically show the diversity of circumstances and contexts that AI can so successfully tackle and create a large social impact. So I mentioned earlier while speaking that we have chosen those areas where the social impact will be the largest. And obviously, very intuitively, we felt that agriculture is one sector which supports large number of livelihoods, particularly in the rural areas. And potentially, as all of us know, successive national governments have been speaking about doubling farmers' income. Lots of effort, lots of national resources are going in that direction. So we felt that that will be a very good domain to really try out AI solutions. So we have created a program, a large scale program, population scale program, as you call it, with the help of World Economic Forum and other partners. And we call that program Sagu Bagu. So this is a Telugu term. Sagu means agriculture, farming rather. And Bagu is well-being. So literally we are introducing well-being in the sector of farming. So what we have done is that over the last 8-9 months or so, we have scouted for AI solutions through various means, including throwing open challenges, calling for proposals, and so on and so forth. And we have identified those parts of the agriculture chain where there is the maximum leakage of incomes, meaning wherever the intervention can bring or increase farmers' incomes the most. So about 8 such sections in the entire farming chain have been identified, and we have got AI solutions. And with the help of the state agriculture department, the state university, of course, various private sector players, these are going to be implemented over a 2-year period in both the 2 crop cycles, the Rabi cycle and the Kharif cycle. So we are very confident, very optimistic about this program, and hoping that we will be able to demonstrate in a variety of crops. These are not just targeted at one crop, but a variety of crops. Also, in parallel, since I spoke earlier about the importance of data exchange, we are also setting up an agriculture data exchange. Again, following lots of principles of how data has to be organized, meaning how they should be accessible, interoperable, but most importantly, the norms of privacy, security, etc., are built through design in these kind of things. So agriculture is one area where the largest rollout of AI solutions is happening. And since Shri Prakash Kumarji is here, one AI representatives are here. We have also implemented a couple of other very interesting use cases. One of them is also in agriculture. So cotton is one of the important crops in Telangana. And cotton is also affected by pests quite regularly. And one of the most common pests is called the pink bollworm, which also brings down the yields drastically, eliminates farmers' potential incomes and so on and so forth. So it was a very potent AI solution, which Vadhvani AI has tried out in the state, and the results are very encouraging. Another, again, a Vadhvani AI solution, which we have implemented with a fair amount of success, relates to a newborn's risk assessment. As most of us know, particularly in poor households, babies are born with low birth weight. And then throughout their life, they carry the burden of that low birth weight and their development is not optimum. And the Anganwadi workers, ASHA workers are tasked with checking which child is born with low birth weight, and then multiple interventions need to be given. But what we also notice, see, as all of us know, the ideal or the average birth weight rather is 2.54 kgs in our country. So if you look at any Anganwadi register, most of the birth weights will be recorded as 2.55 kg. Everything will be 2.55, 2.55, which obviously shows that no one has paid attention. You just have to fill a form and you are showing that everyone is just above the average weight. So again, using a very smart AI algorithm, just by taking a picture of the new baby, the algorithm can tell what is the actual weight of that child. And this is very, very accurate. And we have been able to bring a sea change in the way children are, newborn babies are taken care of thereafter. So these are some very interesting use cases where we are trying to create large scale social impact. But we all know that AI also has tremendous opportunities to be used in the areas of e-governance also. And again, in Telangana, we have pioneered 2-3 very good solutions. And one of the AI solution that we have tried out, we have kind of patented it. We call it a real-time digital authentication of identity. See, any e-governance application where your identity is required to be proved. So far, the approach has been that you have to physically appear somewhere and someone looks at you and decides, okay, right, you are this person, you are Jayesh Ranjan, for example. And wherever we find that this process is burdensome, creates lots of hassles, we have tried to replace that procedure with technology. So I'll just give a simple example. All of us know this, that elderly people who receive pension, they have to appear physically before a pension authority or a bank or a treasury to prove that they are alive. So just for that purpose, to prove that I'm alive, you have to make an arduous journey to some office. And obviously, the more elderly you are, the more challenging and difficult it will be. Similarly, if you want to renew your driving license, of course, for the first time, you have to physically go because a driving test has to be taken. But when you have to renew that license, there's no further test. The clerk there at the transport department, he just looks up at you, sees that you are you, and then the paperwork is done. Similarly, we have tried out a very kind of a path-breaking e-voting solution. How can you vote without going to a polling station? And there also, the establishment of identity as a voter, because as you know, in India in the past, voter impersonation used to be a very big problem, what we call as bogus voting. So how do you establish the identity of the voter? So in all these e-governance solutions, we have used this AI algorithm, which requires you that you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to the pension office. You don't have to go to the transport office. You don't have to go to the polling station. You remain seated in your home. You take a picture of yourself. In other words, in simpler words, you take a selfie. And the AI algorithm, first of all, it checks whether it is a live picture or it is a picture of a picture. So liveliness test of that image is done using that AI algorithm. And obviously your image is matched with a picture of yours in the database, and it could be an old image of yours. So for example, voters list, your image could be 20 years old, 30 years old, and your image as you look now might have changed considerably. But we have been able to train this algorithm in such a way that it is now showing almost 95%, 96% accuracy level. So lots of opportunities, both in e-governance as well as programs related to direct citizens' impact, where innovative ways of AI can be done. And this is what we have been trying since the last 2 years when we started the year of AI in 2020.
Amazing. This is like truly a list of AI-related use cases that can be easily adopted here. Yesterday, we saw the presentation from Ramadevi Lanka on the real-time authentication framework, and we've been hearing about them. And many of these use cases have been listed in the 75 at 75 booklet that was launched yesterday by Honorable Minister, which lists 25 use cases across India for applications of AI that can be easily replicated, adopted. The real challenge in front of us is that how do we scale it up? How do we ensure that what is happening in Telangana goes to other states of India? And that's where MeitY and National Governance Division have to play an enabling role for wider adoption of AI solutions which have been tested, which have been proven to be right. And the more the AI solutions are used, the more data they will have to back on, and the better the solution will be. So that brings me to another use case about which we've been speaking about it, we have been discussing about for a long time. And I come to you, Prakash sir, in your experience in your earlier avatar as CEO GSTN, GSTN is again an amazing piece of e-governance solution which generates a lot of data. And along with that, the database insights, which helps in improving the entire system. So would like to ask you, sir, what was your experience in building that platform using data and using AI-related tools to further improve that system, and how you are using it in your present scope of training and building capacities across government sectors?
Abhishek, first of all, I'd like to thank JS. In fact, for pensioners like me, it's a great thing. I don't need to go to the bank again. I mean, I'll try, but of course, this is currently only for Telangana pensioners. Hopefully, Government of India brings it soon so that all of us can be benefited from that. GST, unlike what JS has done, which is citizen-facing, is largely inward-facing, which is where all the data which we had, a huge amount of data which is generated from around 1.2 crore taxpayers filing almost monthly returns and around 30 crore invoice, B2B invoices getting uploaded. So the first thing, as any tax department thinks, was on fraud detection. And we started with rule-based applications for finding gap between what they report in return vis-a-vis what they report in e-way bill. Similarly, there are three different returns. So sales return is, information return is separate than what you file in your final return, and those gaps. Once we had 2 years data, then we started using machine learning based, and first of them was generation of risk scores. So for registration, we found that lots of registrations were done, used for nefarious activities, and people had just vanished. So we had labeled data, around 5 lakh cancellations done by our officers across the country, and used that data, 5 lakh fraudsters, 5 lakh good people, put 10 lakh into machine learning algorithm. We used three different algorithms, and then we came up with a risk scoring engine, which is now being used for any new application goes through that. And if the risk is high, then only physical verification kind of thing is done. Otherwise, everything else gets processed and registration granted automatically. Then similarly, refund. Refund, again, we had some label data, which was actual fraud data. And then we had others, which was authenticated data. And these two data sets were again used to create fraud risk system. And then what happens after that, every refund application goes through that, and a risk score is generated, and that is available to the tax officer. It is not shown to the taxpayer, it is shown to the tax officer. And based on that, he takes whether he asks some additional information or not. Then we also created a general risk score. So once these are the fraud detection ones. Second fraud detection was lots of networks are created by fraudsters. And some small entity will be created which will issue bogus invoices, and that invoice will be rotated 20 times, 30 times before someone takes a refund on that by showing some export. So we created a network-based application. So with a forward, which means there is a fraudster and he has generated, and then 20 layers have been put and then finally used, or we have department catches hold of some guy who is fraudulently exporting things or claiming refund, and then you find where it was originated. Similar, related party. Many times during investigation, they get some number. You just put in the system anything, PAN, phone number, email address, and the complete network, how this entity, whether it could be a taxpayer, it could be a promoter, it could be a partner, is related to all, what all he or she has done, what kind of business relationship it has, how the sales purchase is taking place, everything comes. And then the investigator can refine it, and based on his requirement, he can download complete. So that's another kind of thing. And then, of course, usual anomaly detection, which is used to find out who is not conforming to the group. So basically, the basic philosophy is, and which is applicable in many places, similar entities behave similarly under similar environment. This is a basic dictum, and this is used not only in tax department, many other places. So we categorize taxpayers in this case, taxpayers based on the turnover and the commodity and the area. So they are supposed to behave in similar manner. And all those who are outliers are basically then. So we created a tool where the investigators can just select based on various parameters. So there are sliders, and then it generates a list. And then later, now the department has come up with where system generates on various parameters, says, look, in your jurisdiction, these are the 10 guys you should watch. So we have reached that level. Then these are all for fraud. Next came for monitoring staff, how people are doing, how in their area returns are being filed, how tax payment is getting done, and all that. And the last one was for policymakers, the secretaries, additional secretary, joint secretary, etc. When they need, like, what will be impact if we reduce or increase tax on a particular commodity by 1 percentile up or down, or whichever way. So then it gives you complete analysis of that. Revenue forecasting. And a very important thing which was done is export-import analysis of commodity at commodity level, what we are, because that's exact full data comes to in the tax return. And the same commodity, how much, what we are importing, what we export. This is what is required by Ministry of Commerce. So this was created basically keeping their idea in view. And there one can drill down from country to state to district. So whichever way you want, you can go. And then different activities being performed internally as well for manufacturing, or for that you can compare two different states, two different districts. So that kind of, those tools have been given for the policymakers. So this is what, in short, a rather long answer to your question.
This is like amazing. In fact, the way data generated from one department impacts policy related to other department, and that's the real crux of the whole thing. Like how we build up a interconnected government and ensure that we have our data, we share it with us, and overall improve governance per se. And the applications of GST and data has been there with the, as mentioned, with commerce. It can be there with income tax, where if a financial fraud is happening in GST, and there will be some correlation with income tax, the correlation with the FASTag data. So, sir, that brings us to the core issue.
So just one thing I forgot to tell you. Of course, we share data with income tax, and they also share. So there is now today, every business entity, both departments know exactly what they do. And in fact, first year we found amazing things. One guy who is declaring 2.5 lakh income for the whole year, in GST, his turnover was a proprietary firm, 200 crores. 250 crores. Now, these were all, this was all presented before the GST Council, and lots of action was taken against them. And then this network analysis also gave the department tool to identify the networks quickly, and huge networks were identified and frauds were detected. Then other department like e-waybill data is a fantastic data to be used by transportation sector, because it tells you at commodity level what moves from one pin code to another pin code. So when we are creating or designing multimodal or new highways, where do we have these places where we the goods are transitioned from one vehicle to another vehicle? So where do we keep them? Or which are the new ways to cut down the distance connecting two places based on volume of traffic today? So these are some of the things. Like e-waybill data is fantastic, and this is all aggregated data. There is no individuals not then it can be easily said. So like what PSSR was saying, these are some of the examples where it can go and become data.gov.out.
That's what.
So, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, that's what one always thinks. The power of sharing, the power of collaboration within government departments, and if we take it further to academia, research, because very often we have the top researchers who do not have access to real data. If we can build up a collaborative approach of sharing information and data, anonymized data, as you mentioned, between government departments, industry, academia, then we can really push forward the agenda of core AI research. So, sir, sir, in what ways we can fast forward this? We all know this needed, but what ways we could fast forward?
No, this is absolutely important. I think the examples Prakash gave are very fascinating because the use of each other's data is tied to the demand for a particular department's outcomes. As income tax department, I'm supposed to collect tax legitimately owed to me and so on and so forth. And if that is my goal, I would naturally start using tools. So taking that analogy to the academic sphere, if my goal is to use data in the most valuable manner, both for my academic growth, my institutional growth, and who funds me, society or government and so on, that will happen. Right now, there is too much of a, I should say two components are needed for this in academia. One is fire in the belly, the other is a little bit of fire in the rear. Now, both needs to be very carefully balanced. You cannot disproportionately make demands on academia to deliver and only deliver, because blue sky thinking, open thoughts, open interactions are very vital. That comes from a fire in the belly. So I think this academia industry interactions can go a very long way if we liberate our institutions substantially so that they are institutionally goal oriented. Currently, our metrics for academics are individually goal oriented. That's too fine a granularity. You should make a demand of the institution and let the institution be very flexible inside. Do you allow someone to do completely pure work? Let them be, don't trouble them because it will be of value later, and others will be of value immediately. That is an institutional aspect. So institutional leadership is where the responsibility should be. Right now, even with excellent institutional leadership, often the responsibility is to maintain order and flow of resources in, and everything is done properly. That's a baseline requirement. Now it can go beyond that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. In fact, that's what increased collaboration, increasing sharing of data, and trying to identify cases that can be replicated, that can be amplified. That brings me to Telangana, sir. Like the question that is brewing in my head, and the question that I am thinking, I'm sure many of the team members from various states are thinking, how can we replicate a Telangana in every state? So what the state should do, or what MeitY or NEGD should do in order to take whatever development Telangana has done to all parts of the country?
Thank you, Abhishek. So we are also conscious of this fact that everyone need not reinvent the wheel. If someone has done the difficult heavy lifting, that fruit should be available to everyone. So first of all, we are documenting all our processes, all our approach very, very meticulously. So for instance, I spoke about the Sagu Bagu program. Now there is a small team whose whole job is to create all the records, all the processes, documentation, etc. at one place. And of course, we also ensure that whenever there is an opportunity to speak about the Telangana model, tell about our use cases, we never lose that opportunity. You will recall that you were the organizer of RAISE last year, RAISE Summit last year, and we had come on board as the state partner in that event. This year also, whenever we have conducted AI Charcha, we are one of the more active participants, and we also participate in industry events. NASSCOM, for example, conducts this AI Game Changers event every year. So last year we were the state partner there as well. And even today, for example, when I got your mail to come to Delhi, I mean, those who live in the south, particularly in a city like Hyderabad, coming to Delhi is no joy. But despite that, we felt that it is important to share what we do in Telangana. And you also rightly pointed out that also look upon our collaborators so that they also disseminate. So since we are doing some very seminal agriculture work, we felt that NABARD will be the right agency who should also understand, and we should have their buy-in also, because they are one of the key institutions mandated to improve, to work towards improving farmers' income, etc. So we take their help in getting lots of our information spread within their internal system. World Economic Forum is our partner, so obviously they take our case study to other countries as well. So we do that in as much as possible through our own efforts. But you rightly said that this could be a very important task for NITI, Niti Aayog, etc., to collate best practices. But most importantly, what I have seen, I've gone through so many compendiums of best practices, etc. But the thing which I find missing there is, how did you do it? I mean, what results did you achieve is, of course, very impressive, and it's kind of very inspirational. But what was the process followed? Because that is where the kind of the fine print is. And if the process template is laid out very, very clearly, it becomes very easy for someone else also to replicate it. So for AI work, we are ensuring that each of our processes are well documented, and maybe at the end of it, we may come out with a toolkit or a template which can be just adopted very, very easily. So.
Yeah, in fact, that makes a lot of sense. How did you do it is the most important part, rather than what you did it, how quickly you did it. So that's the most important part. And maybe herein we can think of Wadhwani Institute of Technology and Policy playing a role. Like if we have to take what, say, Telangana has done or say any other state has done, far and beyond, Secretary Sir also come, far and beyond, how can Wadhwani Institute of Technology Policy help in pushing forward this agenda? Yes. We welcome our Secretary Sir, Ajay Sani Sir, who had been delayed. So we'll, Prakash Kumar Sir was just answering this, and after that we'll have our Secretary Sir to say the.
In fact, Abhishek, that is what we are doing, and I've already reached out to Jayesh to get the use cases, because use cases from our own country, that is the most applicable one. Of course, then when we don't get from our own country, then we go to other countries which are of our size or our level of development. That's what we are working on. And other thing which I thought I will just mention here about the challenges which we face, that's something important to talk about. When we're running, executing an AI project, especially in the government, the first is getting right kind of tech manpower, especially at the way government works or on our payrolls. So what is the way out? I learned it hard way in GSTN. First, we tried to take people from the Nixie rate. So they have some consultant. But then you don't get the kind of people you are trying to get. So my suggestion for the people who are executing such projects is, first you should build into your RFP itself. But then the problem is, while you are drafting RFP, the way we had done in GST project, it is very difficult to imagine what it's going to be 3 years down the line, what all reports and all that. So the best way there is that you get quote from the prospective bidders on blended rate for manpower in this area, and get these projects done on T&M basis. Now, why T&M basis? Because especially in AI projects, there is lots of iteration. You don't know which model will work. You try one algorithm, it doesn't give you a result. You discard that. You go to the next one. Now, this you cannot do it in a waterfall method or where you have prescribed things. So that will be my suggestion here, that whosoever is drafting, or please build into that. Second one is, and very important one, is subject matter expert. Your own people who understand the business. Just put some data scientists and they will do it. No way. Nothing, you will not get, or you will get something which is absurd. So you have to have your own experts who understand the complete process and who have done some work in that area. They have to be associated. They and a data scientist, they need to sit together and do it. So these are the two things which I learned, and I thought I will share it here with our friends from central government and the state government who are in the process of executing. Other things are well known, but these two are very important to do it. And if in case you are already executing, and then if you can negotiate with your vendor and come up with the rate, that's fine. It's difficult, again, whether the IFD will agree or not. So there, again, the suggestion will be to, if you have a change advisory board for managing CRs, change request, the same people could be used. Or if you have a blended rate even for getting some of the CRs done, that could be utilized. But that's the best way under T&M, because you cannot predict, or you don't know exactly what will work, what will not work. So this is the only way to do it. And put your people full-time basis. ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि they are doing handling 3 other projects, work, file, and also this. No, that doesn't work. These are 2 things which I thought I will just share with you.
Thank you, sir. In fact, these challenges we face daily, not only AI projects, but every digital governance project that we do. We are almost short of time, but our secretary, sir, has just arrived, and sir has been guiding us, leading us in all our digital initiatives and AI initiatives, and all aspects of AI, whether related to policy, data governance, setting up infrastructure, building skills, future prime, responsible AI for youth. All is being driven with sir's leadership and direction. We would like our secretary, sir, Sani, sir, to please give us insight on how we can push forward the agenda of AI within the government.
I have really enjoyed the 2 points which Prakash has made, because I fully endorse those, that this is not something that you can do with a regular RFP that we normally do to get an MSP in place. And also the placing our own domain expert time to help this activity. But to my mind, the issue of building solutions at population scale and to leverage AI, I go back to the concept of nationwide platforms, where by first bringing scale and harmonizing across multiple initiatives that are present in a sector, we are able to create a sort of a honeypot. We are able to bring in APIs, with APIs cut across a very large number of live databases, provide a rich spectrum of services which today get provided by multiple siloed projects from one amalgamated platform. And this, when it is at a national scale in India, this basically denotes an opportunity. It presents an opportunity to devise solutions and services that will get to potentially 1 billion customers. So building something can be expensive in AI, but building anything is not expensive when you are targeting use by 1 billion people potentially. There is nothing that is too expensive to build, because it's the scale, and that scale is our unique strength in this world. So if we develop, or if we move towards live, large platforms, and GSTN is a perfect example of that. From disparate, from siloed taxation ecosystems, sales tax and excise, central excise, which were fairly well developed across the states, but different systems and with impediments at state borders. From that, when we have moved to a harmonized approach, it is never easy to move to that because you have to take all the states on board, all stakeholders on board. Decisions today are taken by consensus rather than by a diktat from the center. All the state finance ministers participate in that, and the effort always is to arrive at a unanimous decision. But having achieved that, it is such a humongous resource that you have common taxation across the country and you have been able to do away with state borders. So what GSTN has done represents what can be done domain after domain after domain. And this still was unidimensional or 2 or 3 dimensions to the type of taxation that is levied. But when you look at healthcare or when you look at education or when you look at agriculture, for a farmer it is everything that the farmer needs, whether it is to do with the crop or animal husbandry or marketing or warehousing or whatever, or farm equipment. So all of those, when you are able to bring across a domain into one large living system which has potentially 1 billion customers, it's ripe for bringing in new technology. That technology can be AI, that technology can be geospatial technology, that can be blockchain technology, that can be language technologies. One of the major costs that digital businesses incur is customer acquisition. About 25% to sometimes to even 40% of the expense for many digital businesses goes into customer acquisition. So by creating a platform that potentially has 1 billion people looking for something, we have demolished the entire, this 25 to 40% cost for anyone who does business on that. So the moment we construct that kind of a platform and make it open through an open API policy and through a regulatory sandbox, through a developmental test bed, the finest minds can come in and construct the solutions for us. And they can construct the solutions using a method which is very different from government constructing a solution and providing it to everyone. Because through a competitive route, multiple competing entities, innovative entities, startups, small companies, big companies, research teams can all come in and have a go at applying the finest technologies, building solutions, and riding on these nationwide platforms. I think that is the route that we must follow to build solutions at a population scale. We must build them at population scale because population is our strength. And we must not confine it to what a government team can do by itself or with the help of contracted resources. I think the moment we open it up to innovators across the country, we create openings for them, we create ecosystems for them to prosper in, we will find the best AI solutions, the best emerging technology solutions taking shape in India, for India, and by capturing the market in India, by proving themselves in the market in India, which as Professor C.K. Prahlad had said, it's fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. Why? Because to succeed with any solution in India, any service in India, the successful entity would have provided those services at a very low cost. It has to be affordable to the last man in the queue. If it is affordable to the last man in the queue in India, it is a winner across the globe. If we create products and services using AI that are relevant, that are solving problems for our people, there is no question in my mind that these will be the finest of their kind in the world. And they have a chance to, they don't even have to do a 10x. 10x is a very beautiful word in technology. But anything that starts with a billion doesn't even need a 10x. So that to my mind is the best way to go. There are many, many other things that we can do. But I just wanted to focus on one strand of thought that can get us maximum results and that can cover the most important sectors. After all, Facebook is 50, they claim that they cover 50 crore Indians. Why should healthcare not cover 100 crore Indians and do a Facebook twice over? Something far more meaningful than, the the chatter that goes on social media. Education. The non-availability of highest quality teachers in the villages. If AI can help us solve that problem, it's a far, far more meaningful problem to solve than, looking at what is the latest tweet and what is going viral. All that is meaningless compared to being able to provide high quality of education to the last man in the queue in India. And so buying AI, not to how much more Coke is to be sold, not to how much more, breakfast cereal is sold, but to how to deliver the finest learning, the finest healthcare, the finest agricultural outcomes. I think that is the way to go. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir, for putting it so clearly that how do we build robust, scalable solutions for social good, and how do we collaborate with various stakeholders in order to build these solutions. We are, sir, almost out of time, so either we can have any questions from the audience if we have the young AI innovators, or, sir, we can conclude with the final statements with regard to your message, your vision, for what you would like to tell the state government officials who are present here today, the central government officials, and the young kids who are building the AI solution. Do you have any questions? Oh, yes, we have. Yes, please. Okay. We can hear you, but yeah, my mic is coming.
Thank you very much, sir. At the outset, I would like to compliment Secretary Ajani and Professor Raghavan for educating us on what is happening in AI and the AI mission. I feel very happy that a lot of effort is being done. Perhaps you are aware that today, a news which is very heartening is that there are 3 Indians who are running the top of the digital world. Piyush Jain has taken over, Prayas Jain has taken over Twitter, and 2 others you know. So this is the situation in which Indians are. I only wanted to know what kind of efforts we are making in the research of AI. Because we have been a very late starter, and China has taken a lead much more compared to us. So Professor Vijay Raghavan, Ms. Sani, will you be able to educate us on what kind of efforts we are making to create AI rather than being users of AI. Thank you very much.
Perhaps we can take another question and then
Answer together.
add them together. There's
The
a
lady
lady
at the
behind
back.
you. Yeah.
Yes, please. Lady, yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, congratulations for making such amazing strides in the space. One of the questions I wanted to ask was that while we're trying to progress so much in the AI space, and we're also, it's commendable to see that so many young kids are also venturing into the space and we are exposing them to AI as well. What are the things that we are doing in the space of agile governance? What that means is that now everything has become borderless. So it becomes very easy for us to collaborate with anybody across the country, anybody across the border as well. That also exposes us to possible some threats as well. While it's a great opportunity for us, because it's not like export where there are proper, regulations. You can create apps, you can create so many other services which could be either product based or digital services through which you can collaborate across borders as well. So are we taking any strides in maintaining some sort of agile governance in terms of how do we protect ourselves in that realm as well? That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Both questions, Ajay can answer best.
The first question is about research in AI. We have a fairly large program which is on in many of the premier institutions in the country. The one of these programs is funded by DST, NMICPS, under which a lot of technology incubation hubs have been set up in, I think, 25 different locations. These concentrate on different aspects of not just AI, but also some related technologies, devices, etc. In addition, there's a huge amount of work that goes on in entities like CDAC and entities that are again funded by directly. Fair amount of work is happening around the language technology space and specific domains which attracts funding from the concerned domain departments. Language technology from us in MIT, and other domain departments engage in solving problems with the help of Vadhwani Institute and other institutions of excellence that are also emerging in this area. Many attempt to resolve these issues with the help of startups and small teams through challenge kind of format. That again is an interesting format which is helping us move forward in this direction. We do have a significant program on AI that is taking shape. So that would again put in a lot of effort. I've mentioned about the domain platforms that are starting to take shape, that have already, some that have already taken shape, Aadhaar, UPI, GST and GEM, CoWIN, etc. A number of other platforms in healthcare, in education, agriculture, justice, delivery of justice, and logistics, etc., are taking shape. Around these, again, being platforms, some of that research will get done more in the process of building solutions. If you look at China, for instance, China was alluded to. A lot of the AI, some of the AI that has happened there is in the universities. It's university-led. But to my mind, a significant part, maybe around 2/3 of the AI that has happened in the context of China, has happened not in the hands of the universities or research teams. It has happened in the hands of large and dominant companies that have created huge customer base and a revenue stream. Similar is the case for the Western giants. So I think we need to also, when we look at research, we should not look at only the academic research. We should look at practical research that gets not only done but applied immediately to improve the range and quality of services that get delivered. So that's my take on the first question. The second question was about cross-border.
Collaborations between within the country, internationally, and so on.
Yes, in that actually there is an entity called GPAI. It's a international sort of conglomeration where many of our experts, India participates, is a very active member of that, and many of our experts also represent India in various subcommittees and task forces that they set up. This is working out, trying to work on a sort of a global, the formats with which collaboration can happen in a structured manner. The data privacy legislation, which is in place in many other areas of the world, Europe in particular, Australia and Singapore, Japan, and many other parts of the world. That kind of legislation from our side, also a draft legislation, is with the parliament. In turn, it has been given to a parliamentary committee. So once that comes in, that also lays down the not just the it lays down the do's and don'ts. It lays down the how, not what can be done, but also provide some guidance on how data can be shared across borders with confidence. So data sharing in any case will happen because internet is a global phenomena. So anything that operates as a global business is privy to a huge amount of data. You and I, all of us, I think, are Google Maps has a better idea of where we are than we ourselves have. If anyone was to ask, where is this gentleman likely to be at 8:45 a.m. on Thursday morning, Google Maps will probably be able to answer better than that gentleman. So it's a huge amount of data that already flows across the borders. So it's not as if we have to go seriously out of the way to help data to flow across the borders. In fact, we have to be aware of what kind of data flows happen. What are the privacy ramifications of many of those? What are the rights and privileges that the person whose data it is should have vis-a-vis the entities that engage in the flow of such data? So some of those areas will become clearer as we engage closely with the international community, also with other major stakeholders. And our hope is that as much as the international businesses are able to leverage data from across the globe, we must and we will create large businesses from India that actually are also excel in this area of making use of AI and the emerging technologies and leverage the kind of data flows that are there in the moment we go digital, data flows are a sort of a byproduct of that.
Thanks a lot, sir. While we would love to have more questions, but I am told that we are over time, and the next session is a very interesting session, which will have speakers like Professor Maninder Agarwal, who will give a presentation on blockchain. Shikhar Subramanian from Vadwani AI will share some insights. Dr. Deemka Verma, Lalitesh will be speaking here on GIS, and Amit Sinha is here from Uttarakhand to share his insights on drones and other emerging technologies. So, sir, would you like to say any concluding comments, or we just conclude?
Could have, I'd love to write a lot, but I think we're running late.
Yeah, so the session could have continued longer, but for the want of the excellent set of speakers on next session, we look forward to. I thank all the panelists, Professor Vijay Raghavan for giving his insights, Secretary Sir for explaining how to what government is doing and how we can further push ahead the agenda of AI, and Jayesh Ranjan Sir for giving real examples for real use cases of application of AI and how we can easily, quickly adapt and take help from Telangana for ensuring that we have multiple Telanganas across the country. And Prakash Kumar Sir for offering the support of Vadwani Institute of Technology and Policy for supporting the skilling and capacity building exercises in the field of AI. So thank you all the panelists. Thank you all for doing this. The next session will start here only. Those of you who want to catch some tea, do that quickly, but we'll start at 11:30.